Hello, everybody. There's an idea that has been running through my mind lately. This concept, the destiny you try to avoid is the very one you run into. Now, what am I talking about? My sister introduced me to the Korean drama. Yes, another one. I'm trying to run through all of the ones that are on my mind. That way I can put them away, hopefully. But it was called The Tale of Nokdu. And from that drama, I got this idea in my head about the destiny you try to avoid is the very one that you run into. Now, to break that down, in human nature, we have this fear of the unknown. We hear something that we can't quite pinpoint, something suspicious. Well, perhaps it's not suspicious, but because we don't know what it is, we think it's suspicious. Our fight or flight kicks in. We want to know, is it a ghost? Is it a monster? Is it a creature? Is it an animal? Is it a burglar? Is it an intruder? What was that sound? What was that noise? What is that shadow? What is that feeling I have on my shoulder? Is it a spider? Is it a cobweb? Is it just a passing branch? We want to know the unknown. And one of the greatest unknowns that has always existed is the future. And of course, not everyone is scared of the future, but there are plenty of people who are. And today I want to speak to those people. Now, in the Tale of Nokdu, quick recap. You know, I love me a good recap. A quick recap. In the Tale of Nokdu, we begin with a young man who's in ancient Korea, I guess. who's in former like kingdomhood Korea, and he is living on an island with his father and brother, and I believe his mother too, but I don't remember her. So we're gonna say his father and his brother, and he wants to go to the big city. He keeps wanting to go there, but his father is encouraging him not to. He's trying to convince him to stay here on the island. We're safe, we're wonderful, we're doing great. When an assassin comes and tries to harm his family, his brother ends up injured, but he manages to injure said assassin. And he ends up following said assassin into the city because he wants to know, why were you trying to harm me and my family? Me and my family were like this. Because you see, the whole time that he's been on this island, his father has also been training him in self-defense. So he follows this assassin only to find himself in a widow's village where he has to hide and pretend to be a widow, a young widow. A lot of the people, the women in this village are young widows. There's this village, they're very protected, and they actually have trained women in that widow's village who protect them. So he finds himself there pretending to be a widow, pretending to be this young widow who's interesting looking. And while he's there, he uncovers a few things. There's a king in this land, and this king, people don't really love him. They don't really like him. There's a whole group of people that are trying to overthrow him, and he ends up kind of befriending this king who is nice to him, but is clearly so scared of power being taken away from him. And along with this friendship and along with his time in this widow's village and being in the city, he comes to find out that the king had a son that it's been rumored he killed, but it's unconfirmed. But what we find out is that the king did, in fact, try to kill his son. Why? Because he talked to a shaman, fortune teller, witch, whatever you want to call it. And this shaman lady told him that a child born on a specific date is going to depose him, is going to basically take the kingdom from him. And his own child, the child of him and his wife, the queen, was born on that date. And in fear, he gives his child to one of his trusted servants, people, and says, kill him. And the servant did not. The servant ran away with this child and with his family and went off. And he has consistently been sending assassins ever since he found out this child was still alive to try and kill this child. Now, we can talk about the fact that a king is always going to be replaced because kings die. Kings are not eternal. Kings are not gods, you know? They may think they're gods. They may think that they are the closest things to a god, but they will die. They are supposed to have children, have princes and princesses who are going to take over for them and become the next person in line. We could address that, but we can address that later. In the end, we can say that he has created the very situation he was afraid of, that he was afraid of power being taken away from him. But by trying to kill your own child, you have created an enemy that wasn't there to begin with. You could have raised a child who is actually going to support your kingdom and support your ruler, your leadership, and eventually take over when you die. But you didn't. Not only that, you've consistently sent assassins to try and harm him and the people that raised him. Therefore, if he did know who you were, he would have even more incentives to get rid of you. Aside from that, there were rumors that he had tried to kill his son, which I don't know how those got out other than the fact that your wife gave birth and now your son is missing. Gee, I wonder how they pieced that together. And then there's a sect of people who are trying to depose the king because they think he is unfit and are willing to use the fact that he tried to kill his own son to state that he is not worthy to be king. Again, you created the very situation that's going to get you deposed. Two separate situations are going to get you deposed by one act. And then in the end, the son, the prince who could decide to take over, decides he doesn't want it. He wants to go back to the island with his family and with his new girlfriend that he met in the city. He decides he doesn't want it. But who comes forward is the king's nephew. The king's nephew, who he has kept very close to him, trusting him with almost everything, who seemed to have been living a very docile life. And this nephew deposes him. Why? Because his father had also overheard the shaman when she told the king, the person born on this date will depose you. And the nephew was born on that date. But they lied to the king, or they lied to the public, stating it was another date. And he told his son clearly at some point, and this son knew he was going to take over. He was going to take over power and control, and he did. The very thing he was scared of, not only did he misunderstand, not only did he create, but he walked right into it. No matter what he had done to his son, his nephew was always a threat. If he had kept his son and raised him right, the nephew was always a threat. If he had actually killed the son, the nephew was still a threat. And that's the thing about the future. That's the thing about the unknown. Even when you learn pieces of it, you may think that you have actually learned it all, but there's still so much more. There's still so many details. So what I take away from the Tale of Nokdu is what I also took away from when I would watch That's So Raven. In so many episodes of That's So Raven, she would have these visions and she would try to prevent certain things from happening, only for her to walk right into them. The main lesson is you can't prevent the future. The future is an inevitability, and we only know pieces of it. We may think we have a full grasp of what's going to happen, but when it begins as an unknown, you still don't know fully how much you don't know. You know, if it's unknown, you don't know how big the unknown is, right? You don't know how deep or how many things you don't know and how many things you need to learn in order to fully grasp it. And that's the future. We don't know all the things that are combined in that thing. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that when That's So Raven would try to prevent her parents from getting a divorce because she had a vision, she didn't realize that what she saw and heard them talking about, they were still going to end up saying it, but it had nothing to do with them separating. She saw that a guy was going to have his little flip book where he was in love with her, and she would try and make things happen only to end up walking away. But the thing still happened, but she ended up walking away from someone who actually was in love with her. Just because you see a piece of the future does not mean you understand it. It's like those puzzles where you see something and it looks like a tree trunk, only for them to pan out and it's actually an elephant. Which why the tree trunk was gray? I don't know. And in the same way, it's the same thought I also had when I watched The Butterfly Effect, which actually haunted me. That movie haunted me, and maybe it's why I don't like Ashton Kutcher. Anyway, in The Butterfly Effect, the main character finds out that he can go back into the past. Yes, we're switching it now. He can go back into the past and change the future slash present. But each time he does, he ends up making the present slash future worse. Whether he's incapacitated, whether he's injured, whether he hurt someone else in the process, no matter what, it always ends up worse until he decides to go back to point of conception and delete himself. which I think was a mistake. The whole point wasn't that his entire existence was a mistake. It was that he kept trying to fix things that were not for him to fix. He was trying to change things without knowing everything that encompassed those little changes. Our lives are not just one thing, they're all of the random little things that come together to make up who we are. You know? In the tale of Nokdu, it wasn't just that his father had received that prophecy, it was also the fact that his father was insecure about his own leadership. It was also the fact that someone irrelevant, someone he thought was irrelevant, overheard that too. It was also the fact that someone who seemed irrelevant had their own agenda. It's all those fears that got him creating the very situation he wanted to avoid. But in the end, we don't know if even if he had done nothing, it might have still happened, just like in That's a Raven. I'm rambling. Yes, I am. But all to get to this point where, in all of these different things, whenever you look at these movies and shows where they're trying to play around with the future and with the past, the truth of the matter is one little thing, the butterfly effect, one little thing can change everything. And when it comes to the future, it is unknown. Even the things that scare us, we try to run away from them, but we end up running right into them. Just like the tale of Nokdu, the king, he tried to escape that future. He tried to fight it. He tried to go against it, and he walked himself right into it. All we can do is do our best. All we can do is do our best. And perhaps even the hardest thing, and yet the most accurate thing to do is to accept it. Accept that there are things that we do not know, and accept that we have an obligation to ourselves and to those around us to be the best versions of ourselves and to do right by ourselves and those around us for the future, but also to acknowledge that there are some inevitabilities, some things in the future, whether good or bad, that we cannot escape, that we cannot change, that we cannot affect. Money might fall out of the sky one day and you get to collect it, or some tragedy might happen and we cannot avoid that. Some things we have to just accept. That's the thing about the unknown. It comes with good and bad. So, for anyone who has some anxiety about the future, I hope you can make some peace with the future and acknowledge that it has both good and bad in it. In the tale of Nokdu, the king tried to kill his son. He tried to kill his son, who he deemed as an enemy. But when they met, not knowing who they both were, they became friends. They were very friendly. They got along. They had jokes. The king saw himself in his son without knowing it. He had some beautiful moments with his son that he could have had more of if he hadn't tried to kill him, if he hadn't been so consumed by fear of the future. Stop worrying about the future. It's going to happen anyway, the good and the bad. And that is all for today's book, movie, show discussion. If you have any thoughts about the future and anxieties about the future, let me know. Share them. We're going to be better people. I believe the whole reason why I'm gonna keep doing these is because I believe that stories, whether in books or movies or shows, they teach us how to be better. They teach us from other people's mistakes. We get to learn from where they went wrong. And I hope you take this lesson with you. Let me know your lessons that you've learned about the future, the past, the present, all of that, about time, the butterfly effect, and everything. Anyway, bye!